When it comes to creating an intimate experience a woman will never forget, most men are taught to obsess over performance, techniques, timing, endurance. But what no one tells you is that the real imprint you leave on a woman isn't about what you did, it's about how present you were while doing it. Because presence is the most seductive energy a man can bring into the bedroom. It's the rarest, and it's the one she feels long after the act is over. A man who's present isn't just performing acts. He's feeling through them. He's not thinking about how he looks, whether he's doing it right, or replaying old scripts in his mind. He's tuned into her, moment by moment, her breath, her heartbeat, her body language, her subtle shifts in rhythm. He's reading them like a silent conversation. That's the difference between sex that's remembered for a night and sex that echoes in her body for months. See, a woman doesn't crave perfection, she craves connection. She doesn't remember the man who had the most moves, the longest stamina, or the loudest confidence. She remembers the one who made her feel completely there, the one whose eyes didn't wander, the one who touched her like she was the only thing in the universe worth focusing on. Because in that space of presence, she doesn't just feel desired, she feels devoured, emotionally, energetically, soulfully. Presence is spiritual, it's deeply masculine, and yet it requires a man to slow down, to stop trying to do so much and start learning how to feel. You see, when a man is disconnected from himself, living in his head, overanalyzing, trying to prove something, his touch becomes mechanical, empty, even if it's technically correct. But when a man breathes into the moment, lets go of performance anxiety, and lands in his body, his energy changes. He becomes the kind of man a woman doesn't just want to sleep with, she wants to surrender to. And that surrender doesn't come from dominance, it comes from trust. Trust that you're not just using her for release, that you're with her, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically. A present man makes a woman feel safe, even in her wildest expression. He doesn't need to dominate her to leave a mark. His attention already does that. So if you want to flop her like she'll never forget, you start with your mindset, not your movements. Strip away the need to impress and replace it with a desire to experience her, breathe with her, match her pace, let go of the script, be in the moment, not ahead of it, not outside of it, right there. Because once she feels your full, undivided, masculine presence, nothing else compares. And that's the kind of man she doesn't just remember. That's the kind of man she can't forget. Because in a world full of distractions, the one who gives her complete attention becomes the one who lingers longest in her memory. You can't truly unlock a woman's full expression, her passion, her wildness, her softness, without creating one thing first: emotional safety. And this is where most men miss the mark. They think unforgettable sex comes from skill, from speed, from sheer dominance. But what actually makes the experience unforgettable is how deeply a woman feels she can let go. Because feminine desire isn't activated through force, it's freed through trust. Now let's get something straight. Emotional safety doesn't mean being passive or overly gentle. It's not about over-explaining or tiptoeing around her needs. It's about being rooted in your masculinity while holding space for her vulnerability. It means showing up with presence, maturity, and calm, even when she's exploring parts of herself she rarely shows anyone. When a woman senses that you can handle all of her, her desire, her emotion, her surrender without flinching, that's when she begins to open in ways she doesn't even fully understand. You see, the feminine body doesn't respond fully in an environment of tension. If she's second-guessing your intentions, if she feels she's being judged, or if there's even a subtle energy of ego or performance in the room, her body will pull back, even if she doesn't say it. Her arousal will flatten, her expression will shrink. Because the feminine doesn't open under pressure, it opens under permission. Permission to be soft, to be loud, to be slow, to be wild, to laugh, to cry, to moan without restriction. And that kind of permission isn't given with words. It's felt in the energy you bring into the space. It's in the way you respond to her hesitation, the way you touch her with intention, not hunger, the way you take your time, not because you're trying to last longer, but because you're savoring her. When a woman senses that your only agenda is to make her feel held, seen, and honored in her full range, she doesn't just respond, she remembers. That's what separates average intimacy from unforgettable intimacy. The average man wants release. The unforgettable man offers reverence. He doesn't need to control her expression, he invites it. And because she feels no pressure to perform, she reaches levels of depth, sensitivity, and desire that most men will never experience. It's no longer just physical at that point, it becomes soulful, something beyond words, something she'll revisit in her mind again and again. Not because of what you did, but because of how you made her feel while doing it. So if you want to be the man she never forgets, stop asking yourself, what do I need to do to impress her in bed? And start asking, what kind of energy do I need to embody so she feels completely safe to let go with me? Because when you become the man who makes her feel safe in her rawest expression, you don't just touch her body, you leave fingerprints on her soul. One of the most underestimated forces in unforgettable intimacy is anticipation. Most men rush through moments, racing toward the act itself, believing the climax is the highlight. But what truly makes a woman crave you, remember you, even fantasize about you after it's over, is everything that happens before you ever touch her. It's in the build-up, the slow, deliberate creation of tension, the art of making her want more without giving it too soon. Anticipation is where her mind becomes your playground. And if you understand the feminine psyche, you know that her arousal begins not with physical touch, but with emotional stimulation. She starts to respond the moment she feels seen, the moment you say something with just enough mystery, just enough depth, that it lingers in her body like heat before the fire even starts. You don't have to lay a single finger on her to ignite her senses. The way you look at her, the way your voice slows down when you speak to her, the pause before you kiss her, these are the subtle masculine cues that heighten her awareness of you. They let her know you're not in a rush, that you're intentional, that you're building something with her, not just taking something from her. And this is psychological. Because when a woman feels tension rising slowly and consciously, her nervous system begins to associate you with excitement, pleasure, and longing. You're not just a man who's giving her stimulation. You become the man who activates her imagination. And the mind is the most powerful sexual organ. She will remember how you made her think about you before anything even happened physically. Anticipation also reflects your level of control. And that, whether she admits it or not, is intoxicating to a woman. A man who doesn't need to rush, a man who knows exactly what he's doing with every pause, every look, every breath, that man stands out. Because in a world of impulsive, fast, and shallow experiences, the slow burn becomes unforgettable, to respectful in the most erotic way. You're not assuming access, you're inviting surrender. And when she feels that you're not demanding her, but waiting for her to open, on her time, at her pace, her body begins to trust you. That's when she lets go. That's when she gives you her full expression, not because you forced it, but because you made her crave it. So instead of rushing into action, learn to enjoy the build. Tease her mind. Linger in eye contact. Let silence stretch just a few seconds longer than she expects. Brush your fingers across her skin with no goal. Breathe with her and let the tension grow so thick it becomes undeniable. Because unforgettable intimacy doesn't start with the body, it starts with atmosphere. And the man who knows how to shape tension, to sculpt energy, to let her feel the fire before the flame, that man stays in her mind long after the moment is over. Remember, when you master anticipation, you're not just preparing for sex, you're preparing for impact. What separates a man she forgets from a man she remembers isn't how much he says, it's how much he listens. And I'm not talking about words. I'm talking about learning to listen to the one thing most men completely ignore, her body. Because when a woman is truly connected to you, she'll say far more with her breath, her rhythm, her moans, and her silence than she ever will with words. The question is, are you paying attention? Most men treat intimacy like a routine, a checklist. They go through the motions they believe are supposed to work, completely missing the point that every woman is different. Her turn-ons, her pace, her emotional states, all of it is in constant motion. And if you're not attuned to that, what you offer becomes generic, disconnected, and forgettable. You become one more body that touched her, not the presence that read her. You see, the feminine body is always giving feedback. It's alive with expression, but it's subtle. She won't always say, I like that. Instead, she'll arch a little more. Her breath will shift. Her body will lean in. Or she may suddenly go quiet, not in discomfort, but in deep presence. That silence is sacred. And when you start to feel her responses instead of rushing past them, everything changes. This is what I mean when I say unforgettable intimacy is co-created. It's not something you do to her, it's something you create with her. And that creation is built on your sensitivity, your awareness, your willingness to adjust in real time, not because she asked you to, but because you felt her shift. That's what builds trust in the bedroom, not just physical skill, but emotional intelligence. When she senses that you're listening, not to what she says, but to what her body is whispering, she opens more, she lets go deeper. And that's where the unforgettable begins. It's also a matter of ego. Many men are so focused on proving themselves that they lose touch with her completely. They're chasing approval instead of connection. But the man who listens without needing to perform is different. He's not trying to impress her. He's trying to understand her. That's what turns intimacy into art. When a woman feels heard in her body, she experiences safety. When she experiences safety, she gives you more than her body. She gives you her truth, her wild, her soft, her everything. And it's not because you asked, it's because you listened. So if you want to fuck her like she'll never forget you, don't just learn her likes. Learn her language, the one that doesn't use words, the one she's been speaking with, every touch, every breath, every glance. Because when you learn to speak that language, fluent in her silence, fluent in her movement, you don't just have sex. You create a moment she'll replay in her mind again and again. In the end, the man who becomes unforgettable is the man who learns to hear what most men never even knew was being said. There's a unique kind of power in a man who knows how to lead with both dominance and devotion. Not one or the other, both. That's the balance most men never master. They either lean so far into control that it becomes forceful, or they become so overly gentle that they lose polarity altogether. But unforgettable intimacy doesn't exist in extremes. It lives in the tension between command and care. Let's be clear, dominance isn't about aggression. It's not about imposing your will. Real masculine dominance is rooted in clarity, direction, and intention. It's knowing what you want, moving with purpose, and being confident enough to take the lead without asking for permission, while still being sensitive enough to feel her energy and adjust when necessary. It's the quiet but undeniable message: you're safe to let go because I've got this. That level of leadership is rare, and when a woman experiences it, it speaks to something primal in her. She doesn't just want to surrender. She aches to. Not because she's weak, but because you've created a dynamic where her surrender is honored, not used. That's the difference between being in control and being trusted. Now here's where the other side comes in: devotion. And that's the part most alpha men avoid because they confuse it with softness. But it's not softness, it's strength with heart. Devotion is what makes a woman feel cherished in the depths of her being. It's what communicates that you're not just here for the moment, you're here for her. It's in your eyes, your attention, the way you hold her after, not just during. And when you bring those two forces together, dominance and devotion, you create a kind of sexual experience that transcends mechanics. She's not just following your lead physically, she's trusting your emotional container. She can be expressive, loud, messy, wild, tender, and still feel completely adored. That's unforgettable. That's soul level. Because let's be honest, anyone can memorize positions, anyone can learn tricks, but it takes depth to make a woman feel taken and treasured at the same time. It takes presence to guide her confidently while still being open to what her body is asking for. And it takes maturity to stay grounded in your masculine energy while holding space for the full range of her feminine expression. This is the kind of intimacy that stays with her, not just in her body, but in her emotional memory. It leaves her with the deep, unshakable imprint of a man who wasn't afraid to lead and wasn't too proud to love her through it. So, if you want to be the man she can't forget, stop choosing between being the leader or the lover. Be both. Because when you dominate with care, lead with awareness, and move with presence, you become more than just the man she slept with. You become the man she still feels even when you're gone. There's something few men truly understand. Unforgettable intimacy isn't about how much of her body you touched. It's about whether you touched her soul. A woman might forget the details of a night, the setting, the rhythm, the sound, but she will never forget how she felt in your presence. That's the real imprint. And it doesn't come from technique. It comes from intention. When you make love to a woman's body, she feels physical pleasure. When you make love to her soul, she experiences something far deeper, something that lingers, and that only happens when your presence moves beyond desire and enters the realm of emotional reverence. This is the place where sex becomes more than just sensation. It becomes remembrance. You see, we live in a world that's obsessed with surface-level satisfaction, fast pleasure, quick release, transactional intimacy. But a woman doesn't crave another hookup. She craves an experience that reaches into the hidden places of her heart, the parts she doesn't show anyone else, the parts she usually protects. She longs for a man who sees her not just as a body to conquer, but as a being to honor. Very few men rise to that level. To reach her in that way, you have to bring your full self. Not just your masculinity, not just your strength, but your truth. She has to feel that you're not wearing a mask, not trying to impress her or manipulate the moment. She needs to feel your depth, your calm, your groundedness, your willingness to be real, because when you bring authenticity into that space, you give her permission to do the same. That's when she opens fully, not just physically, but emotionally. That's when her walls begin to drop, not because you broke them down, but because she finally feels safe enough to lower them on her own. And when a woman trusts you enough to show you her emotional core during intimacy, you're not just having sex anymore, you're sharing something sacred. This is where eye contact matters more than position, where breath matters more than noise, where the way you hold her afterward speaks louder than anything you did during. Because it's in those quiet, unspoken moments, the stillness between heartbeats, that she feels the truth of your presence. And that's the kind of experience that lives inside her, that she thinks about days, months, even years later, not because of what you did, but because of what she felt, and more importantly, what you awakened in her. A deeper truth, a freer expression. A sense of being fully seen, fully accepted, and fully desired, not just for her body, but for who she is. So if you want to be unforgettable, don't just try to impress her, inspire her. Show up with a presence so grounded, so intentional that she forgets the world and remembers herself in your arms. Because when a woman feels your energy reach her soul, not just her skin, you become more than just an experience. You become a memory that lives in her.